Ready? You can start.
My name is Jaden Cox, and this study is called Unmasking the Truth. First, I'm going to define COVID-19. So as we all know, COVID-19 is a global pandemic that entered America in 2020. America is still recovering from COVID-19 through various methods in which this study pertains to. This leads to the next definition. Face masks are believed to be a form of protection from the COVID-19 virus. They continue to be mandated in various public spaces across the world, but more specifically in America and even in Randolph County. While face masks were a common technique to attempt to flatten the curve of 2020, remote learning was also implemented in schools across the country to limit the in-person contact of students and staff. Remote learning is attending school online from home. This was enforced upon students in a state of emergency when the pandemic first made an appearance in America. Some students did not do so well, but others thrived. Eventually, in some counties, students had the option to go in person and mask or continue remote learning. Every student had a choice for their learning style and got to choose the best learning environment for themselves. This was short-lived, as starting the 2021 and 2022 school year, students no longer had an option and everyone went back to in-person learning. This led to the curiosity that started this study. The key word in this study is optional. This study is all about having an option and not an enforcement on personal decisions that fit your personal needs. While this study favors a remote learning option, it does not in favor of the enforcement of remote learning. With that being said, this study also favors optional masking as well. If there is a remote learning option, then technically masking is not required for students in the time of necessary mask mandates. Common complaints with masking are lightheadedness, oxygen deprivation, difficulty speaking, which is most commonly a complaint with teachers as they try to communicate with their students all day, and migraines. Medical effects of masking include their unsanitary if worn incorrectly, and the misuse of masks can result in COVID-19. Children do not treat their masks properly, even down to when they eat lunch or take mask breaks. If the mask really absorbs all of the potential COVID-19 particles from getting out in the air, then imagine how many students take their mask off at certain points of the day, whether that be to eat or have a snack or take a mask break, and lay it on a surface in which other children are going to sit during parts of the day. Students are taking this contaminated mask with the germs it supposedly protects the air from and touching surfaces others will touch shortly after, which can also spread COVID-19 and defeat the whole purpose of the face mask in general. Acne breakouts is another one. Children and families are not going to think about washing their face mask as much as they should. This causes acne and sickness in children, and this can also contribute to the argument that the misuse of masks becomes even more dangerous than not wearing them at all. And the inhalation of CO2, which will be further elaborated in the explanation of Dr. Vinay Prasad's CO2 level study on children. In this study, Prasad said that CO2 levels were high and inversely related to age. The youngest kids appeared to have the highest CO2 concentration. So the age group getting masked all day in school, which is primarily children, is the age group that has the most dangerous CO2 levels with masking. Now we're going to get into the psychological effects of masking. So there's a lack of clear communication, which can specifically be an issue with school-age children developing the ability to non-verbally communicate with facial expressions and behavioral issues, which will further be elaborated on. But first, to discuss, can masking cause greater risk than COVID? The number of school shootings increased drastically when students went back to in-person school with masks required. Covering of students' face during the school day is a dangerous thing, as the school system already knows. Considering the no hats in the school building policy, the hat policy is so strict as hats can potentially hide parts of students' faces and cause danger and/or school shootings. This strikes another question. If hats are this much of a danger to schools because they can compromise facial recognition, then why are actual face coverings or face masks required or even allowed in schools? So now, here's a timeline of school shootings to further explain. In 2018, before COVID-19 entered America, then there were 24 school shootings. In 2019, before COVID-19 entered America, there were again 24 school shootings. This shows no decrease or increase in the number of school shootings. Although a decline is preferred, a steady number of 24 is still better than an increase. In 2020, everyone was 100% remote learning, so it's a given that this number decreased, and that was 10 school shootings. And this is just self-explanatory because no one was really in school, so this is just kind of a gap here. And in 2021, back to in-person learning, with masking required, there were 34 school shootings. This shows a drastic increase from pre-COVID statistics. The difference between the school years of 2018 and 2019 and the school year of 2021 is that in 2021, there was a face mask mandate and everyone was forced to go to school in person. Another quote from Dr. Vinay Prasad was that the truth is there are potential benefits to masking kids and potential risks. He emphasizes in this quote that masking has negative and positive effects. With that being said, it strengthens the argument that parents, students, and teachers should have a choice if the benefits are worth the risk. This matters because many teachers, parents, and students have different needs. Masking requirements while being forced to be in school are not the best scenario for everyone, especially with the risks involved. Students have different needs, and here are some real-life scenarios that students deal with, which shows that every student has different circumstances. Student 1 could work completely fine with a mask and prefer in-person learning. Student 2 could get headaches while masking and not be able to focus in school because of it. And student 3 and 4 both have loved ones at risk at home. Therefore, the mask helps them, but a remote learning option could help them even more by narrowing down the risk of transmission of the COVID-19 virus from school to a 0% risk factor. A similar study on students' preferences of remote learning interviewed parents of students and found that almost 1/3 indicated that their child wanted to stay remote. Meaningful numbers of parents, 22% and 25%, responded that the child was the same or happier, and that their child was the same or better academically. This helped me realize that parents should be interviewed too in my study, as they know their child more than anyone and should have a say in their children's education. There are some perks of remote learning for some students, and those include time management. This is a big one, as students can work on their own time, and this better prepares students for adult life, as they're not going to have someone giving them instructions on what to work on and when. Students can focus more in school and focus less on physical appearance and social life, which is a big deal in middle school and high school. Students have the freedom of choice, as there are most likely no mask requirements in their own home. And there's a reduction in anxiety. Students experience less social anxiety in the comfort of their own home, as anxiety rates skyrocket with the pandemic and teenagers. In-person school can make students very anxious. Working from home or on their own time may help avoid the constant anxiety of the school day that some kids struggle with. This leads to my research question. Should remote learning be an option when masking is required? Here's the connection of study and my topic. The purpose of this study was to uncover the reason that remote learning could not be an option when masking is required. In the selection of my method, at first I wanted to go with the survey route, but then I realized that that's a more impersonable method, and the topic was too sensitive to just give people multiple choice answers, or multiple choice questions. I also could not get as many details with the multiple choice questions, so I did not go with the survey. Then I considered an interview. This is a more personal method, and it's a face-to-face conversation, which is better for the sensitive topic. It also allows more in-depth responses. And so that's why I went with the interview. This study focused on a number of children and adults affiliated with the Randolph County school system. These participants were asked about their experiences before and during the recovery of the pandemic within the school system. The rules of this study include confidentiality. The participants' personal information, including identity, are to be kept confidential. This was made known to each individual before the interview process began. Another rule of this study was originality. Participants were also informed before the study that there are no right or wrong answers in this interview. This ensured that they answer truthfully and the information gathered in the research is accurate. Lastly, neutrality was the last main rule of the study, and participants were given neutral instructions that did not persuade them into believing anything. During the interview process, a teacher said that enforcing masks becomes an issue, which stood out to me as teachers are often overlooked. This is an uncommon idea, as students and parents typically tend to get irritated towards the teachers for the enforcement of face masks, while teachers don't enjoy the mandates either. This pertains to the study by proving all different types of participants in this study struggle through the enforcement of face coverings in the school building due to students who cannot behave right with a mask on. Now to discuss interview statistics. 50% of participants claim to have health effects when masking on. While it was expected that no one experiences maximum comfort while masked, it was not expected that half of the participants struggle more than just a little bit of discomfort, or struggle with more than just a little bit of discomfort. 2/3 of the participants noticed a negative change in student behavior with masking mandates in class. This could be accommodated by a remote learning option for some students. A counter-argument to that statement would be that the same students that have behavioral issues with masks would not do their work from home. But to address said counter-argument, there will always be a number of students with behavioral issues, but there is a study that proves that this number could decline with a remote learning option. A study on behavioral differences of students uncovered some interesting information. A teacher interviewed in this study claimed that in her class, one boy, in particular the class clown, was a persistent challenge and his behavior influenced his 23 peers, 15 of whom were boys. The teacher followed up by saying that the same boy was thriving during remote learning. The hypothesis in this study was that the majority of people do not struggle with masking as much as I thought. The interview process went very smoothly, and participants seemed comfortable talking about the topic of issue. And in the results, surprisingly, a lot more people struggle with masks than hypothesized and would like another option. So here's my conclusion. Based on the information collected through this research, officials should research different options for students and teachers when masks are required. In future endeavors, I think that officials should be interviewed. This study focused on students, teachers, and parents of the Randolph County school system. Doing further research on school board officials, state and county, to discover why remote learning has not been an option yet with mask requirements would be beneficial to form a clearer understanding of all perspectives. Thank you.
So how did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact the research process?
So first, like I said in the presentation, I was going to go with a survey, and I feel like going with an interview really contributed to my overall understanding of people's feelings that I interviewed. Because if I would have done a survey, I would have just gotten yes, no, or prefer not to say answers. But in the interview, they were able to elaborate and really give me their opinion and the reason for their answers, which helped me better understand the topic.
How does your new understanding address the gap in the scholarly conversation?
So, no one has really studied this particular research question. It's really just a big political argument of, do masks work, do masks not work? And I wanted to just get the people's opinions that are actually dealing with the consequences. Like, everyone's dealing with the consequences, but the people in the school system, I wanted to narrow it down, and I feel like that addressed the gap because everyone's still trying to figure out what to do in this pandemic, and so it's just, I don't know, I just felt like I was kind of trying to get a better understanding for myself, and I couldn't find this done anywhere. Like, I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
If you could revisit your research process, what would you do differently and why?
So I feel like I kind of just jumped like to this question, but I feel like a more narrow topic could have been discussed rather than, like, this is such a broad conversation or topic to research. So I feel like I could have narrowed it down to just one part of the question, and if that makes sense, just, so it's more like a building block up to this question for a better overall understanding of it whenever in my future endeavors.
Well done.
All right, that's it.